Thank you, Madam Chair. Since I've been here in the Senate, I've been a disciple for fixing the whole healthcare system along with the regulatory agencies that feed into it. It's a classic example of huge corporations, I think, involved with a very, very large and clumsy government, and a lot of it's needed. Madam Chair refers to the gold standard of the FDA. Try explaining that to all of the rare disease victims out there and the families that have to contend with it. I've had a bill out there called the Promising Pathways Act that simply says acknowledge that it's a different dynamic when you've got maladies that have a prognosis of 2 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years if you're lucky. When we had the last hearing, I felt that there's not enough attention being paid to that. Do you think we've got the dynamism within the system that can differentiate between two different issues? Those that have been around for a long while, where there's maybe plenty of options, even though the industry does things like patent tweaking and so forth. And I'm doing this from the point of view of patients, employees, and business owners that don't own a healthcare company. So let's, Dr. Marks, tell me what you think about, do you feel comfortable with the agility and the framework that's currently in place to address the issues that I'm talking about?
So thank you for that question. So we have tremendous flexibility that Congress has granted us with use of our accelerated approval program. That allows us to use a variety of surrogate and intermediate endpoints. It allows us to look at products that have been studied in as few as 2 handfuls of patients and potentially approve a product if they meet the standard for safety and effectiveness. So I think we have a tremendous, essentially, canvas to work with. Sometimes I think we have to be more creative with how we go about that. Toward that end, we are working in our center towards trying to find ways to allow cell and gene therapies, particularly for very small populations, that is, perhaps 10, 20, 30 people in the United States who might be treated with these, to find their way into the marketplace more rapidly. There's some work that has to be done there, and some of those actually may interface with some potential legislation that's pending that has to do with essentially using platform technologies. But we do have a tremendous amount of flexibility here. We have approved products on the basis of even 8 patients' worth of data when those data are very sound.
Do you think we are using research and development from other countries that might be ahead of us? And again, I hear, well, that's done somewhere else. We need to still run it through the gold standard of our own FDA. We don't have the market cornered on all the best ideas. And if it's increasingly bureaucratic, and even though you say you have the ability to do this, should we be partnering up with other analogous agencies and efforts across the world?
So thank you. We're very open to looking at data that come from trials conducted overseas. I do agree with you that to the extent, particularly for rare disease patients, we need to try to work with colleagues globally to benefit patients as much as we can. We will continue to do so, and that actually has been an area of focus of the center, working actually with WHO and partners in Europe.
In building a successful business over the years, you do 2 things well. You size up the market and you listen to the customers. And in this case, I was disappointed in the last hearing, we weren't getting patient input. You learn more there at the grassroots level than you many times do in the ivory tower. And I think it would behoove your entity to pay attention to the patients, the people out there talking about it, living with it. And many of these innovations, these new cures, aren't coming from big pharma because they don't get the return on investment. And you may want to look at doing something that gives extra help to the smaller companies and the startups that maybe wouldn't measure it in the same way. Do you think that has merit?
Certainly, it does potentially. So very happy to continue to work with you on that.
Thank you so much.